Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelsen, professional horse trainer. And with me once again is my good friend Debbie Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor and brilliant rider.
Oh, only because of you.
So today's topic, I thought we would kind of wrap up these things that we hear as riders, the sort of the ubiquitous instruction that we have all heard from the time we first got on a horse and still hear it today. So we talked about quiet hands, we talked about shoulders back, and today I thought we would talk about the look where you're going. And why are you
Okay, whatever.
laughing? Why are you laughing, Deb? Because
It just cracks me
it's,
up.
and so like from what you know today, what's
Oh,
what's funny? Why are you cracking up?
um,
Because I got an instant image in my mind and I
did
was
you really?
laughing with you, but yes, yes.
I get the instant image of, well, the thought that comes through my head is where the eyes go, the body goes, which is true. So I see this leaning tower of person going around a
Oh,
turn
so you
kind
see
of
the
thing.
whole body following the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And
the
you and I,
lean, if you look, it's kind of like we do the same thing. I do that when I drive my car, thinking I'm keeping straight and I'm looking to the right, and all of a sudden I'm over to the right. And I'm like, how did that happen?
yes, yes. No, and I got kind of the same image when I see a rider who's really trying hard to follow the instructions, look where you're going. The main thing I see is the rider's going one way and has no idea where the horse is underneath them. To me, it's a total
Mm,
disconnect.
yeah, I can see that. I can see that happening. Yeah,
And you and I both grew up jumping, like
right.
learning jumping, and that is so drilled into your head. The heels down, look where you're going, look at the next jump. As soon as you're going over one fence, you better be looking at the next fence.
Yep,
Yeah. And
I
so
remember that.
it can actually cause you, instead of getting out of the horse's way over the jump, like you said, your body sort of follows the eyes. And so you can actually cause the horse to land more on the forehand, and you can put your weight over the front end of the horse on the downside of the jump.
Right.
So, and I think people who get too focused on the look where you're going, that excessive twisting through the neck,
Mm,
really turning the head. Okay, now my eyes are looking where I'm going, but no connection to what's happening with their seat or their legs or the horse underneath them.
I'm trying to play with that in my mind, and I'm wondering if that translates, because you're saying it's a disconnect, that we're gripping more with tension because it's a disconnect.
Yeah, I would say that's,
I'll have to play with that when I ride.
and it's
And
easy to observe because what I see
okay.
is the human brain can easily go into the future. It's
Mm,
harder for humans to stay stride by stride in the moment,
right.
right? And so as soon as we are thinking our eyes will lead the way, it's like we're out ahead of the horse in our mind. And so we're
Mm.
no longer riding the strides that are happening right underneath us.
I'm wondering if there's a great article called The Lost Sixth Sense. It's out of print now, but it goes into that we've become so visual instead of kinesthetic.
Mm,
We're kind of letting our vision control, and like you said, thinking ahead than being present in the body right now, which is what the horse does all the time.
right. Exactly. And I think like I was up in Ocala at the World Equestrian Center last week and I was watching a Grand Prix jumping course.
Mm,
And it was so interesting because when you're looking at the upper level riders, they do look where they're going. Some are a little exaggerated and have that disconnect that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the ones that are winning and the ones that are really doing well through the course, they never lose the connection to the horse. So they can even turn their head without getting ahead of the horse's movement. There's a,
Wow.
they're riding every stride up to the fence. So they're taking in the back end of the horse while
Mm.
their eyeballs are sort of taking in the visual field ahead of them. That's kind of the best description of what it might feel like to look where you're going without disconnecting from the horse.
Yeah.
And the more we twist, maybe you can explain this, but what I find is the more the human twists the neck, left or right, the less sensation they have in their seat as a rider. Like literally, they can't feel where their seat bones are. They can't feel where the horse is underneath them. They can't find the middle of the motion with the horse through their core or their seat. And so I think that's why the gripping and the heels down and the leg clamping ensues is I just it's an observable phenomenon that the more the human twists the neck, the less they can feel in their seat. And I don't know if you can explain that as a body worker and Alexander technique instructor, but it's pretty predictable. So to
Mm-hmm.
help people feel every stride and feel the movement of the horse, not getting ahead or behind, I have them look at the horse's poll or look right over the pole through the
Right.
ears. So they're not losing track of where the horse is while we're looking where we're going with our eyeballs.
I think you hit the nail on the head with everything is, and you see this everywhere. People aren't living in the present. Um, they're already on to the next task, of instead of pay, and that's what the Alexander work's all about, is paying attention to how you do what you do,
Mm,
not get on to the next thing. And I'm always telling people that your eyes are just lenses like a camera. You don't see with your eyes. The information goes to your optic nerve, and that's where it's quote unquote read. So I
mm.
always tell people, let the information come to you instead of seeking it. But that disconnect is everywhere. It's not just in riding. It's sitting at the computer, it's driving, it's everywhere.
So you see the same thing with people sort of eh, like I was wondering if there was a physical reason, because if we think down our spine, our cervical vertebra in our neck have a big range of motion for twisting.
Mhm.
And then our thoracic spine attached to the rib cage has slightly less. And then our lumbar spine has even less.
Mhm.
And then our sacrum and pelvis has even less. So to me, it's like if the more we twist our upper body, the less information we're able to receive through our seat and our low back. It almost shuts it off.
Yeah,
So,
that makes so much sense because and I know we've talked about this in a previous podcast about carrying the bucket of water. You're not going to carry the bucket of water way out in front of you because the law of physics isn't going to let that happen.
oh, right. How much more effort it is.
Right. So,
Yes.
and with that disconnect that we keep talking about between, and I used to say this when I was doing massages, is I could tell when people were totally disconnected from their bodies. It's like their thinking stopped at their neck. And
And
I'm wondering,
so
does
what do
that
you
make
mean
sense?
by that? Like
Does that
explain that a little bit.
They had
How would
no
you
idea what's going on in their body. Just not a clue of being connected to, like you said, riding to the next fence. Well, I was taught, what am I doing in between the fences to get to the fence?
right.
What stride lengths, or, what's going on in between, or what's going on the turn? Because I was taught the turn and the straightaways is what makes the fence good.
Oh yeah,
The j-
you could really see that with even at a Grand Prix level, you
yeah,
could see. And one guy came in who was so connected to his horse that he could make these elegant tight turns, and he was never ahead of his horse, never behind. And after his run, he was in first place. And you could see it because the horse and rider were kind of moving as one unit, where some of the other riders that were coming in with a horse that was a little bit excited or overly forward, and they were just leveraging that with,
right.
more leverage, either in the bit or the, running martingale, something like that. But they were kind of leveraging that power up front, but it wasn't a connection between the horse and rider, and it wasn't a power of the horse. So they were the ones that the turns would get a little bit wide, or
Mhm.
the horse would tilt a little, or the rider would tilt a little, and then the next fence, there'd be a pull down. They,
Right.
especially the uprights, that's always the bogey fence. And so it was like that forward energy, either the rider being ahead of the horse, looking where they're going, thinking of the next fence, but not connecting that into what they're feeling. You could
Right.
really tell who was more visually oriented and who
Ah,
was staying connected through their seat.
yeah.
And if you look at beginner jump lessons or intermediate jump riders, that twisting of the neck is so exaggerated. And if you really watch Grand Prix riders, it's not there anymore, almost across the board.
Interesting.
Some of them will turn their head more than others, but that sort of exaggerated look where you're going twist of the neck, which I agree. I think sometimes the body leans in the same direction as the
Hmm.
eyes, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the horse is landing hard on one shoulder or landing too much on the forehand, can't get their legs under them for the next turn or the next jump. And at a Grand Prix level, you see it far less than what you see at a beginning or intermediate level of jumping. And I think because it doesn't work. And I
It's
go,
a,
I think that's
yeah.
a little bit the point of all of these phrases that we hear when we're being taught as a beginner or intermediate rider, like shoulders back, look where you're going. When you get into upper level competition or higher levels of riding, that gets in your way.
I
You
agree.
almost start to do the opposite of what we're taught as beginners.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense because when I always tell people it's just messy at the beginning when you're learning something new.
Yes.
It's not organized. It feels crappy. But once you get that unity of mind and body working together, that for the level riders, it probably looks easy, like less effort,
Yeah,
less, yeah, less
that's
movement,
exactly
less
it.
turning with your hand, all of that goes away because it's like you're just one unit
Yes.
functioning together instead of a rider and a horse.
And that takes, like you said, our eyeballs are sort of the lenses of the camera that are taking
Hmm.
in the visual information, but there's a way we can see with our mind sort of the
Yes.
middle of the horse or the tail of the horse. And some of the best advice I ever got for jumping was set up the tail, get the
Oh,
tail, get the tail to the jump. And what
I
that
like that.
did was we're going to look where we're going. That's just so innate in us that when we're using our mind to visualize the tail of the horse coming to the fence,
Hmm.
then you actually, for me, it helped me stay very connected, kinesthetically, to the movement of the horse. So if I had to push the gas pedal a little or bring the horse back a little, it made sense because I started to see where the back end of the horse was. And we can do both because, like you
Right,
said, we see with our mind, not our
right,
eyeballs.
exactly.
So we don't have to turn around and look at the tail to know where it is.
I mean, you can even play a little game to see if it works. It always fascinates me, say, to brush your teeth.
Mm,
Do you Brush your teeth.
Oh, looking, sticking your
What?
head forward in the mirror.
Totally distorting your neck. I'm like, why do we do that?
I don't know why we do that.
Or
Because
putting on makeup. I really focus on, okay, you can just stay right here. You don't have to distort your neck to
yeah.
put mascara on.
And if you do, you might need a magnifying mirror
Yeah.
or more lights.
But and another place you can play with it is, and this one's really hard, is bringing food to your mouth.
Oh,
Because
interesting. Instead of taking your head to the food,
yeah,
bringing the food to your head.
that's why I can't go out and to eat because I can't
I don't
watch
think
other
I've ever even thought
people.
about that.
Well, it's a primal instinct to, to go to the food. So inhibiting that and trying to just bring the food or the coffee cup or whatever to you is very powerful.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm describing too, that my jumping got infinitely better when I started to think of turning the tail of the horse
I
or
like that.
bringing the tail of the horse straight to the fence, rating the speed kind of from the middle or the hindquarter of the horse rather than up in the face. Right? Because then you're using your whole body. And yes, you use your reins, and yes, your eyeballs are kind of focused out in front of you, especially the faster you're going. But that I think is a description of seeing with your mind that
Mm,
keeps you kinesthetically aware
yeah,
of where the horse is. And I go, I don't think that's any harder to teach a beginner rider than that sort of look where you're going. Because it's like, look where you're going. Everybody just turns their head. And as long as your eyeballs are focused, we forget about the rest of it.
right. We
So,
do. It's a disconnect.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why some riders take the jump and the horse doesn't.
Been there, done that. I
Yes.
actually have a picture of that.
Flying over the jump without
Me
the
flying
horse.
sideways over the jump when the horse is kind of going under it with its hind legs.
Yeah.
Not pretty.
Not pretty. Not pretty. No, and I even started to apply that same idea to like a dressage pattern, looking
Mm.
where I'm going with my mind focused on the horse's tail.
I really like that. I know you remember this, way back when you were giving me a lesson and I was saying something like, I think I'm ready to go ride a dressage test, blah, blah, blah. And you
Oh
said,
no,
oh,
you wanted to go jumping.
is that what I was
Yeah,
gonna do?
you wanted to go
Okay,
jumping because your mare was getting more balanced
right.
and you're thinking tick-tock because she's getting older. And so you got through all of the dangerous problems with her and she was doing pretty well. We're working on balance. And you said, I think I'm going to go do like a hunter show.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
And
you put a pole, you said, okay. And you put a pole on the ground,
just a ground pole,
just a
single
ground
ground pole.
pole. I couldn't even get over that successfully. I went, oh gosh, this is
Well,
horrible.
you could get over it, but the point is, can you keep your horse in balance
Yeah,
to over and after and set up again? So can you do a perfect circle with a ground pole on it or a perfect pattern with a ground pole?
yeah,
And that's where the dressage and jumping really should overlap because like you said, the times and the good time and the lack of faults have to do with how you're riding between the fences. Once you get to the fence, the horse getting over the fence is the horse's job. It's
yeah,
not going to get any better or any worse once that takeoff starts. And
yeah.
so it's the ride between the fences. And that's what I saw with some of the people who were placing very high in the class is how they rode between the fences. You could see that horse was going to make it over the fence or was going to hook a rail. You could
Right.
kind of see it coming in the approach or the turns, or you could tell some of the super fast looking horses were not getting the best times. The ones that
That's an
were,
interesting way to put it.
they looked really fast and they were being leveraged back by the bit to sort of stay in control and monitor the stride length and speed. But internally, I think some of them, the rider was ahead of the horse,
Mm,
and other ones, the horse was like so ahead of their own movement that they weren't properly set up for the good turns or the straight lines. And the riders who got the best times, they looked fast, but they didn't look as fast as the ones that were rushing through the course.
right. Trying to get there.
There was a lot more self-control within the horse. And, what I love about watching stadium jumping is because it's technical, it's fast, and you win based on time and faults, right?
Yeah, there's
So everybody came in with a different bit, something different on the horse's
mhm,
head, and everybody rode a little differently. And it wasn't because it's not based on a subjective evaluation of the judge. You
right.
could just see that you could see the connection between the horse and rider. You could see where it was lacking. You could see where people were resorting to, they're never trying to frame the horse in jumping, but it's more
Mm,
about just controlling the speed with the leverage in the bit or on the head. Where in dressage, you're trying to frame the horse a certain way,
right.
right? And I even commented to a friend of mine I was there with, she's studying to be a judge, and she keeps asking me, a dressage judge, and what about this movement or what about that movement? She'll show me pictures. So while we were watching, just before every rider in the Grand Prix starts the canter and begins the course, they all start with a trot. And I told her, I pointed to her and I go, that's some of the best trot work that you would love to see in dressage.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they're not framing the horse, but these horses were buoyant and springy and bouncy and forward. And it was a beautiful trot into a canter. And then as they go through the course, the speed picks up and some did better, some did worse. But I thought there's a beautiful trot from a powerful horse. And there
hmm
was in the trot, once they started jumping, sometimes the leverage of the bit came into play. But that little trot, maybe a circle or two before they started the course, everybody's on sort of a loose rein. They're not really gathering the horse up yet. And it was just gorgeous trot.
yeah.
It was a gorgeous trot. And I said, that's what I would love to see in a dressage ring is that actual freedom of movement.
That's interesting that you brought that up because we have it uh, when we're working with riders and they finally get to a place of ease and organization, they want to capture it and hold on to it. And that's where the problems begin because that's where they're trying to physically
Put their
manipulate.
bodies, yeah,
Yeah, and it just
physically get their
goes
bodies.
awry. It doesn't work at
Yeah,
all.
yeah. There's got to be some freedom within there
Good
to
point.
make
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
that's a
that's
good
what
way
I
to put
saw
it.
because I got a little off topic there. But if we come back to sort of where I put the ground pole down for you,
Yeah.
that test was exactly knowing the training, look where you're going, that one ground pole on the ground giving you a pattern instantly put your brain way ahead of the horse's movement,
Yep.
right? And that's where I think we start to get busy with the reins, or
Uh,
we feel like we have to grab the reins if the horse is a little fast, or we're kind of spurring and driving with our seat if they're a little slow. Um, but we're not in harmony as soon as we have that job
exactly.
to do. Yeah, we shift from listening to the horse into direct, 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 direct,
Yep.
and it all fell apart
Yep, it
because,
did.
yeah, and that's a good example. Thanks for sharing of that the disconnect I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a disconnect. As soon as we bring the and it's I think it might even be a predatory thing. You
It
know, that
is.
that
The-
tunnel vision that instead of staying up with the periphery like a prey animal like the horse is doing.
no, and there is, I'll have to find research on it, but because humans are capable of, well, all eyeballs are capable of focal vision and
Mhm.
peripheral vision. And the focal vision, which is especially strong in predatory species, because that's how we hunt,
Right.
I think the focal vision actually takes us out of our body into the detail of what we're watching, our prey. Do you know what I mean?
That
So,
makes sense.
so we're no longer as self-aware because our focus is on the other with focal vision.
Okay.
And one of the quickest ways to get riders to connect to their horse in real time, or that idea of picturing the tail of the horse arriving
Hmm.
at the jump or arriving at the letter, that puts us more in our peripheral vision.
I
And I
think so. Yeah.
our peripheral vision seems to awaken our kinesthetic sense. Like it puts us back into a self-awareness of our own bodies when we purposefully use our peripheral vision, where when we use our focal vision, um, we kind of leave our self-awareness.
Yes.
We're sort of projecting out of our bodies into what
Hmm.
we're hunting or seeking or focused on. And I think maybe that's a good description of how if we're picturing the horse's tail while we're visually approaching the fence to look where we're going, we can still see straight
Hmm.
in front of us while we're using our peripheral vision. But I think
Right.
if we're only in our focal vision, and I think that comes, it's a human instinct when we try harder, we look harder at one thing. Do you know what I mean?
And
Like we
everything gets
zero.
harder.
Yeah, we zero in our little laser focus. Where if we can go into our peripheral vision, all of a sudden we're aware of what's happening under our seat. We're aware of where the horse's tail is behind us. As
Yes.
much as we can see everything that's in front of us, it doesn't take away our ability to use our eyes like a camera. But the more we play with purposefully shifting into our peripheral vision, then what I see with good riders is that when they look where they're going, that whole axial skeleton is following the eyes, not just the
Right.
head. You know, so there's an integrity through the whole midline of the rider and a stability, a connection to the horse, so that when you're looking where you're going, it's a whole body event. It's not just a twisting of the neck.
Yeah, and there's the dart procedures, which are kind of the evolution of our movement, that as we get older, we tend to move our head and then our eyes. But if we
Oh,
start playing with moving our eyes first, our bodies will follow. So that's what you see kids do, say when they're going from crawling and starting to climb up on things, to come up.
mm-hmm.
They will always move their eyes first and then the body follows. I'm wondering if the disconnect is, as adults, we tend to move our head and then our eyes follow. Whereas babies, the eyes go first and then the whole spiraling of the axial skeleton goes with them.
Interesting. I'm going to
Yeah,
play with that. So looking with your eyes, but not necessarily twisting your head to see where you're going.
right. I don't
And
suggest practicing it in the car,
I was
but
just going to say, I'm going to practice this in the car.
oh gosh. Well, if you are, make sure it's not a busy intersection or
Okay.
something.
On the straightaways, on the highways,
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, when we drive, we don't look at the hood of the car.
or the
We're in,
steering wheel.
right. So we're sort of practicing it there
Yeah.
already.
No, and I think too, really good drivers, they're also taking in what's going on around them.
Hmm.
You know, and that's why like now a lot of car safety features are these alarms and beeps when
That's
somebody's in
true.
your blind spot or somebody's on the side of you because of our tendency to really only focus right in front of us.
Yep.
Yeah, and the same thing we could take in through the optic part of our brain, not our eyeballs, our whole car, our whole horse as part
Right.
of what's moving, right? And what we're dealing with in motion. But that's a good idea. So eyes and then body, or playing with, am I in my peripheral vision or am I in my focal vision?
Yeah, those are good things to play with.
Because you can look
Or
where you're going either way.
or are you doing your grocery list and thinking about where you have to be in 20 minutes? That's
Not if you're doing a jump course.
no. But if you're, going out to ride, a
Yeah.
lot of people, they're looking at their watch, they're saying, I've only got so much time, instead of I'm at ease with myself and I have time. And being in the moment, they're thinking about, I've got to get on and get to riding, and not even checking in.
Well, and
Wh-
that's, I think, what we all have to learn from horses
Mm,
is the capacity of the human brain. Our frontal cortex allows for a huge capacity of imagination, thinking into the future, imagining, and even getting stuck in the future. Like that thought of, I only have 1 hour. I have this
mhm.
laundry list of things I have to achieve in the hour
Right.
with my horse. And that's where their focus is from the beginning. And horses have a very small, limited capacity for choice, but they have it, but almost no capacity of imagining that something
Mhm.
is different than either what it is right now or what it was in the past. So horses have great memories, but they don't have great imaginations. And so the horses, like, in order to really connect with a horse and have that harmony, whether we're performing or not, that integration of horse and rider requires that the rider doesn't get too far in the future where the horse can't
Exactly.
go. Yeah. And I love it. I can always tell when somebody says, all of a sudden, my horse XYZ, right? Usually involving a wreck of some kind. All of a sudden, my horse blew up. All of a sudden,
Yeah,
my horse bucked. And I go, it's pretty rare that it's all of a sudden, but
exactly.
it's very common that the human brain was somewhere out there in the future and not in the moment with the horse, either feeling the anxiety build or feeling that problem start to take hold with the horse. So instead of being in the moment, the rider's mind very easily goes into the future.
Hmm.
And especially when we use our focal vision, even if it's an imagined outcome of your day's ride, the more we hold that image in our head, the less we're in the moment to moment of each stride.
Yeah, I agree.
And so we tend to get ahead of the horse. And I think that's why, too, it's so frustrating when horses get behind the rider and we call them lazy. And it just drives humans crazy if the horse isn't fast
Going,
going. Right,
go.
right. But again, that can happen because our mind is just ahead of where the horse is. Right. So the only way to get
Yeah,
a horse going forward that we call lazy, because I don't really believe in lazy horses. I go,
right.
they have a reason that they don't want to go forward. I have to bring the rider back to the speed at which the horse can volunteer to go forward.
I like that phrase.
And
Save that one.
you can build on it from there, but you can't through wishful thinking or focusing on the future make your horse go faster than what your horse is giving you right now.
Right.
And boy, do we try.
We
We've got
do. We're very good at
whips, we've
trying.
got spurs, yeah. But we're not going to get power if the horse isn't volunteering the forward energy. We have a bigger problem than a lazy horse. We have a
Y-
dysfunctional horse.
Right. I'm on quite a few Facebook groups, and what amazes me is, like you were talking about, not seeing that something is going, what happens, happens. A lot
Hmm.
of trail riders that are getting dumped, you
Yeah.
know, um, and I know it's because they're not present within the moment, because I really believe the horse gives you indicators seconds before a blow up.
Yeah, but it is fast.
Yeah, it's fast.
Horse, like the timing of moving with a horse in harmony with the horse's movement is faster than the human brain can consciously think.
Right.
That's why it has to shift into intuitive at a certain point. But it's so interesting in lessons where I'm trying to bring a rider into real time with the movement
Mm-hmm.
of the horse. Most humans find that mentally fatiguing.
Yeah,
Be-
their
be-
coping skills for that are not very good.
it is it's an intense focus for the
Yes.
human to just stay in the moment of a moving
Yes.
horse, and everything starts working, things get better, but it's really mentally tiring for the human.
Hmm.
It's an intense focus because horses are changing every half stride, every stride.
Yep.
And especially if you're just teaching the horse how to move better and improve the mechanics, everything is happening so fast. All of those changes, even at the walk, right? So all of those changes in the horse's body can be overwhelming at how fast they happen.
Yeah.
And it can be mentally exhausting for the rider just to keep the mental focus on the present moment, moment, moment,
Yeah,
moment,
I'm good
moment.
for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, we can do this. We can do this. Stay with me.
Yeah. And at a certain point, the more you practice that, suddenly you do see the whole horse with your mind. And that's where it starts to shift into more intuitive riding.
Yeah.
And what I call a talented rider is somebody who can do that without really knowing that that's a special skill that they can do.
Right. And I think that's that the when you see those upper level riders, the jump riders you saw, it's just that we've used this word before. It's so fluid.
Yes.
It's so organized. And it's easy. It's just easier
It
when
looks
you,
efficient.
yeah, all of those
Hmm.
words. And, you know, but if we try to, as humans, like you said, think ahead, become focal, try to make it happen, it
It's
just
very
doesn't,
elusive.
it
Yeah,
doesn't work.
it doesn't work. No, and I believe every person is capable of being a great rider,
Yes.
but we have to tap into a part of ourselves that we don't have to use in other, like maybe in other sports. I'm not well versed in all the different sports, but in riding, staying connected to your equine partner is a skill we all possess. It's like but we have to kind of dig it out. We don't use it in our day-to-day normal activities. So that's why the training of the rider is as important as the training of the
Mm.
horse. It's not impossible for us to do that. It's just not instinctual for us to do that.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, that you have to inhibit that subconscious. It's a subconscious thing that we have to bring conscious to fix the problem.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Well, see if you can say that. I kind of am following you, but is there another way you could say that?
It is probably, we've got innate habits that we've brought with us that maybe aren't serving us very well anymore. And until we bring those to our consciousness, we don't know what we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of our habits that we have as we get older are really just practiced instinct.
Yeah.
It's what came instinctually to us. And when we work with horses, that no longer works.
No, it doesn't.
Like to be successful with a horse, we're asking the horse to overcome its prey animal instinct. And we have to overcome our predatory instinct
Hmm.
and learn to work differently to have that harmonious relationship.
Yes.
And I think that's why that look where you're going makes me smile when I hear it because I go, "Oh my God, I hope they figure it out." Because it's not wrong. It's not entirely wrong, but that's the thing in the horse industry is these sort of phrases that we hear in instruction over and over and over. I can't look at them and say, "No, no, that's wrong." But most often it's interpreted instinctually
Hmm.
to the human predatory psyche and how we use our body, which works against us if we're
Hmm.
trying to build kind of a connection to a horse in motion and develop
Yeah.
the horse. So our interpretation of it, of the words, I go, we just maybe need a better explanation or different words because we do see with our mind. And when I go
Yeah.
into my peripheral vision, I can feel the legs of the horse, the hindquarter, the back, the neck, the shoulders, and I can see where the horse is underneath me and behind me, as well as I can see in front of me.
Yeah.
And that's the combination of maybe the visual and the kinesthetic information coming into the nervous system creates that picture in your mind.
And but you're you're in a space that allows that to happen. Does that make
Yes,
sense? Yeah,
yes.
you can't be focused on that focal vision and hear all that information from your body plus the horse's body.
Yeah. And you and I used to joke when we first met, we sort of like just instantly became friends because we recognized each other. And our joke was, we're out of the same litter of Jack Russells.
Yes.
And it's like, so, it, you know, I had to like put my ambition and my
Yes.
type A personality, I had to really put that on the back burner in order to develop feel and harmony with the horse.
Yep.
And that's why when I set that ground pole up for you in the arena, I was like, oh, I'm going to trigger the Jack Russell. Here it comes.
It
And
did.
everything just goes to crap because it's like, yep,
Just just one ground pole.
yes. But it just triggered habits,
It did.
years of training, years of habits. And
Yeah.
that's the part where we don't need a 6 foot jump to overcome a habit.
No.
We can use a simulation.
Yep.
But learning to see that ground pole and bring the horse's tail on a straight path over that ground pole takes a different kind of looking where you're going,
Yes.
and you're looking at the whole picture almost from instead of a laser focus on the middle of that ground pole or the wall on the other side or the next fence on the other side. It's like we can expand that look where you're going to
Yeah.
encompass 360 degrees.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a hallway in front of us, which is our
Right.
focal vision. It could actually take in everything around us.
Hmm.
And that kind of look where you're going, if if people watch upper level riders, the ones that look graceful and elegant and efficient, they don't follow the same rules that were taught in lower level riding. So the next
That's
time you guys
interesting.
go to a horse show, especially like jumping or maybe racing, steeplechase, something like that, you'll see the rider turn the head, but some will do more than others. And you'll see the ones who are connected with the horses. You can tell that they're taking in a whole kind of global perspective of their own body and their horse's body. Even if they turn their heads a little, that won't be the first thing you notice about them.
Right. Right.
And that's what we can't quite put our finger on.
Nope.
You know what I mean? Is, oh, that rider's turning their head really good, but they're taking down rail after rail and can't make the turn, right?
Right.
That rider is looking where they're going, but there's some kind of intangible elegance or ease about that ride. What are they doing?
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's, I think, exactly what we have to learn to do is to connect our kinesthetic vision
Hmm.
with our optical vision.
Yeah.
And we can do both.
It's kind of like the third eye concept of seeing
Yeah, but
that kind
it's
of thing.
I think in Sally Swift's book, she called it soft eyes.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, and soft eyes is peripheral vision.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's
Hmm.
just not having such an intense, almost keyhole vision of your next jump or your next letter or your next achievement. It's sort of,
Exactly.
softening up and taking in everything that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And it's more of a wiggly, zigzaggy path to the goal than it is a straight line.
Right. Yeah, I remember an Alexander mentor once said to me, when you go to teach, be prepared, take all your tools, but also be open to the possibility that it might change directions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just true of nature or people, and especially horses. They remind us that all the time.
Yes.
Because if we're not in the moment with the horse, it's very easy to quickly get out of sync with the horse.
It could be dangerous,
And that can be
actually.
dangerous. It's not good if you get ahead or behind or too far
Mm-mm.
left, too far right, or you're just not checking in with the horse's, say, emotional state or where your
I
horse
think
is
we
focused.
get to that do list, and that's a big word in the Alexander community. We're supposed to be non-doing, which is the different perspective, but it's that ground pull or it's that letter or whatever, that stimulus is very hard to
Yeah, and
stop, to
I
shut
really
that
like,
off, that that's not what this is about.
yeah. And I think even I'm going to play with like sort of bringing the food to my head rather than
Yeah.
taking my head to the food.
Or your
Um,
coffee cup or whatever. That is the biggest habit that's very difficult to override.
yeah, and that was part of that awesome jumping instruction about bringing the tail to the fence.
Yeah, I like
It
that.
was like, let the fence come to you rather
Yes.
than you going to the fence.
Yes, exactly.
Keep riding the horse and then just let the fence come to you so
Yep.
your horse can navigate it. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's equally as valid a thought riding a dressage test as it is a jump course.
It would be, yeah, I would
It's
think
more
it's
important when you're jumping because your wreck is going to be bigger if you don't. But your horse's balance or that harmony between horse and rider suffers all the same, even if it's not
yeah.
life risking, or a safety issue. It still is just as important. So even in a dressage test, when I'm thinking about the geometry of the test,
Hmm.
it's like letting each letter or each transition or each change that you're going through in your pattern, letting that arrive rather than reaching for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a tough one I would think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does tax our human brain to think ahead just a little, but to also keep maybe more of our conscious awareness in the middle of the movement with the horse
Right.
or on the back end of the horse. But there's going to be 10% of us thinking, okay, what's the next change in the
Exactly.
dressage test? Where's the next jump? Right. But I think
Exactly.
if we get that imbalance of 80% thinking what's coming up next, that's where it's so
Mhm.
easy to lose our harmony with the horse. I think
Yes,
our harmony with the horse requires the greater percentage of our awareness, and we really don't need all that much to look where we're going.
exactly.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Any final comments? Have you
Nope.
mastered the ground pole?
I don't have any.
Oh, okay.
I don't have one on my property.
Yeah. All right. So thanks everybody for joining us. We hope you play with some of these ideas about looking where you're going, your eyeballs versus your brain. You
Yes.
can look where you're going either way, metaphorically. Well, no, actually, because it is in the
Yep.
brain.
Hmm.
So thanks again for joining us. Please like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and welcome to the new subscribers. We've had some nice new
Oh,
subscribers on the
good.
YouTube channel. So thank you guys very much. And we hope you are enjoying the podcast. And comment, questions, or any topics you'd like to hear, please share. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next
Bye.
time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.